Welcome back. The release of the Public Protector report the day before the inauguration created a lot of excitement, with many who are critical of Pravin Gordhan asking President Ramaphosa not to appoint him. Gordhan is adamant that the recommendations are misguided and politically motivated. The president has since appointed him to the displeasure of the economic freedom fighters. The public protector has also had negative findings against the Democratic Alliance's former mayor of Tshwane, Solim Simanga. The public protector, Busisiwe Mkhwebane, has since unleashed a storm against herself in the public domain. But is this justified? The Deputy Public Protector, Kevin Sfiso Malunga, is with me to talk about these matters and other cases that we have not had the opportunity to discuss in the past. And Deputy Public Protector, Kevin Sfiso Malunga, pleasure to have you with us here.
It's always a pleasure, Tim.
Let's start with the timing of this whole thing, right? That it was a day before the inauguration of the president. And I think that is part of the controversy emanates from there. Why was it important that this report be published then?
Okay, I think, Brett, Tim, let me just clarify that this was not the only report that was released on that day. There were 6 reports that were released, in addition to 11 that were released the previous week. So the media briefing, the context was 17 public protector reports affecting all matters of state, from smaller municipalities such as Polokwane and Prasa and all manner of. So I think maybe because there's a lot of political excitement and sensation over this, that it then gets arrogated and put up there high above other reports. But in terms of how we do our work, everyone is equal. These are obviously, by nature of maybe sensitivity of a matter, something would be given attention, but this is a report of the public protector just like any other report. Mm-hmm. And the parties affected by it are affected in a similar fashion. We do not have special people in terms of how we do our work. In terms of the law, we are enjoying to do our work without fear, favor, or prejudice. Okay,
now, that's a fair point. Mm-hmm. But when one reads the application by the Minister Pravin Gordhan, as well as the former Commissioner Upamahashule, from their point of view, they think that this matter was rushed because they were asked to supply certain information, affidavits that they filled in. They say less than 48 hours before this report was made public, that they submitted 2 days before the matter was public. In other words, the points they are raising were not incorporated in the report that finally was made public.
Okay, but Tim, the merits of this matter are subject to review applications, and people are filing papers and so forth. And it will be advised of me to actually comment on the merits, because then this interview as well will then be a subject of litigation, and I don't want that. I don't want to put the institution in that space, because we're a very litigious society right now. But what I will comment on is the fact that we are an institution that relies on, that is an evidence-based process. We give parties a chance to respond. It's a to and fro approach. And the best of my understanding, this was afforded to the parties. And of course, the courts will pronounce on this. This is, as I've indicated, one of many of hundreds of reports that are being released by the institution. But of course, because of its political sensation and the fact that maybe it's more well-known figures, it will be out there in the public domain.
I suppose the other thing is the fact that other people who enjoy high political profile, for instance, the EFF and its leader, Julius Malema, already said that on the basis of this report, then the president should not appoint Pravin Gordhan, which in itself now raises other questions. That, are these reports meant to promote any particular political interest? And of course, in the media as well. You've got commentators, analysts wading in and also adding their own voice to this debate.
Indeed. I'm very glad you're raising that, Brett, Tim, because we don't have control over what politicians and political players do with the products or processes that emanate from a constitutional body. We stick to our mandate. For example, a complaint may be in the system, which may actually be very political in nature, but is within jurisdiction. I'll give you the example of the Nkandla report, which I was already there. I was Deputy Public Protector when that was done. The complainants were functionaries of the Democratic Alliance, right, complaining against former President Jacob Zuma. And in many ways, the allegations, or rather the outcomes that they sought were political, but they were also very valid in law in terms of the Constitution of the Republic, of holding the head of state accountable in terms of the Constitution, the Executive Members Ethics Act, and other law of the Republic. So that's the catch-22 that we're faced with. That we can't say to Mr. Floyd Shivambu, Mr. Shivambu, this is political. We can't handle it. So even the ANC, where it is in opposition, for example, in the Western Cape, we have a Western Cape provincial office. We find that, for example, in the DA is in charge in the Western Cape, and the ANC then becomes the complainant, which is what happened, for example, in the Mareta Ocamp matter in Tshwane, where functionaries of the African National Congress then become the complainants. The scales are reversed or tilted. So that's the nature of the beast. And look, the courts are also not immune in terms of litigation. People litigate on issues that are tend to be political nature.
Let me just pick your brain on this from your experience. You've dealt with these controversies before. When you look at what's going on in the media specifically about this specific matter of Pravin Gordhan, what do you think? I mean, is there any way, a particular way in which this matter could have been handled differently? Because, as I said, majority of the commentators, analysts feel that there is some political agenda.
You know, a lot of them are armchair critics. They have never done an investigation. They have never engaged with legal processes. They talk. Which is fine. Talking heads, it's fine. But the reality is that you have a complaint that is valid in law. You investigate it. You interpret the law according to the best of your ability. And it just happens that the matter is intensely political. So there's a lot of media sensationalism in matters which should otherwise be more driven by legal processes. And then, of course, some want to influence the outcomes of this and that in terms of some want to appear clever on TV and so forth. But the reality is that these are legal processes. And I've said this in the past, that media players, even journalists, when they write articles, have the law in front of you. Look at the statutes. Look at the policies that are alleged to have been infringed. Do a tick box exercise to say this is what the investigation is trying to achieve, or what the investigation is trying. Remember, people are in many instances tend to shoot the messenger. This institution is a messenger. It's an institution supporting democracy, where anyone, Tim Modise, can come and complain about the premier of Gauteng.
I'm going to talk about how we go about complaining and some of the matters that you've investigated and pronounced on as the Public Protector Office that we have not paid attention to as the media specific in particular, because that's the way the public would get to know. But let me stay with this point of the person of the Public Protector, that it's somehow a very important part of the commentary out there, isn't it? I mean, after this report was published, not only were there calls made that the president should not appoint Pravin Gordhan to a ministerial position, coming from the EFF in particular, then in the media space the call was being made that the Public Protector, Busisiwe Mkhwebane, should be removed from her position as a result of that. What do you make of such calls?
That's a political discourse, and sometimes maybe some of it premature in its orientation, because obviously there are many matters that come from the previous Public Protector that are being finalized, that we are busy with. Some of these are actually aging. I mean, one of my current tasks is to ensure that we clear the backlog in the system. So it's expected because of the nature of how things have come to be. South Africa has become a very litigious society. People go to court. People go to the public protector. I've had in the Western Cape, for example, a parent who challenged. I handled this matter a few years back. He challenged their child's school report on the basis that the child was being prejudiced, that they couldn't move from one grade to the next. So people are more aware of what needs to be done. And of course, there tends to be more concentration on these conduct failure matters, which your corruption, your big political role players, rather than the bulk. And the bulk of our matters are your so-called Gogo Dlamini. Last time we spoke about Gogo Dlamini when I was here, which is the ordinary person's type of matter, which deals with usually your service failure when someone is complaining.
But I get a sense that for those who cover the public protector on a regular basis and comment on the work of the public protector's office, that there's an emerging sense that the office is somewhat politicized. I mean, the example is that of the Estina Dairy, for instance, right? When we read the provisional report of the past and the most recent report, it looks like some information was taken out of that report and questions are raised. Was it at somebody's insistence, instruction? Is it a matter of law? And I'm asking you these questions because members of the public, including the Gogo Dlamini, they want to make sense
of what's going on,
of how, what points you consider when you compile the report. Let me use the Estina Dairy report as an example.
Our team currently is almost 500 people nationally. I think almost half of those are lawyers, and so you've got bright people who will interrogate these things, look at the law, look at policy and so forth, the quality assurance system, senior investigator quality assurance. So there's an attempt by all means to try and ensure that there's quality in the product. Of course, no institution or human being is infallible. There will be mistakes here and there. But I would agree with you when you say that the work tends to be politicized naturally because of the nature of the institution, which was created to hold those to hold those public office to account. In other words, they have to answer for how they've done things. And this is one institution which is conveniently used by any member of the public.
Sure. And I want to pick up on this.
And unfortunately, and something we can't do anything about.
Sure, but
it's used for political ends.
Yeah, and I want to be specific in terms of the matter of the Estina Dairy and also the findings in the Tshwane mayor matter, and we'll discuss those in a moment. My guest is Kevin Sfiso Malunga. He's the Deputy Public Protector. We're talking about the controversies surrounding the office of the Public Protector, particularly in the matter of Minister Pravin Gordhan. Remember to engage with the show using the hashtag, the Modise Network, on social media.